What is up, all you Slashaholics? We are the Slash Sisters, and we are back with another episode of the Afterlife Podcast.
Welcome to the Afterlife. I'm Slash Sister Jen, and that one is... No, she's Slash Sister Hallie.
Sorry, I had some dental work done, so my S's may be sounding a little off.
That's okay. That's alright. I'm going to be ending up having some dental work done pretty soon here, too.
Exactly.
So y'all will just have to deal with us.
Right. But in today's episode of the Afterlife, we are going to be diving into the paranormal and other strange stories, i.e. cryptids, aliens, whatever. We reached out to you guys. We did get some stories in. We didn't get a lot, but
we will let you know right now, this is just the first episode. We will definitely be doing a second episode. So, if you are listening out there and you go, oh my gosh, I have a story to tell, and you want to...
Malia.
Malia's got some stories to tell. I just know it. I've heard of some of them. But what I was going to say is that... if you want to come on and sit with us, or if you want to Skype in and tell a story.
Or if you want to remain completely anonymous, that is completely fine.
You can just send it to us and we can read it on air for you.
Absolutely. So to kick things off, I think I'm going to start with my personal first encounter with the paranormal.
I'm excited to hear this.
I think I've told you this story before. Yeah. I was approximately 8 years old. And to put things in perspective, my parents and I lived with my grandmother for the first 17 years of my life. It was my grandparents' house. My mom grew up in the house, so there's history to the house. My grandfather on my mom's side died almost 10 years to the day before I was born. He died December 7th, 1972. I was born December 6th, 1982. Yes, I was born in the 1900s. Screw you.
So was I. We're old. Be patient with us.
These little kiddos. I can't keep that up. Anyway, my bedroom was right above the room that he passed in.
Okay.
And I woke up at one point in time, I swear I was about 8 years old or so, and I looked down, not to where, like, the foot of the bed was, because the way my room was set up, you couldn't just sit there, but it was, like, where my feet were touching on a twin-size mattress, mind you. And there was an indent in the mattress, like somebody was sitting there, but there was nobody fucking there. So, what does any 8-year-old do? Fetal position!
Yeah.
Head of the bed!
Yeah.
But then I was like, oh, wait a minute. I bet you that's Grandpa. So, I mustered up the courage, crawled over to the spot, started to put my hand above the area where the indent was, felt cold air, and then the indent just raised up. Like, whatever was sitting there just got up and walked away.
Get up and leave.
It's the only time I ever saw that, the only time I ever had that happen, but I look at it as my grandfather looking in on me because he never got to see me, because he died 10 years before I was born. So.
That's really cool. That's really cool. I will then, I guess, tell my very first story of a paranormal experience. When I was a child, I lived at my parents' house, obviously. And my... I
mean, you could live with your grandparents.
Yeah, you could have. You lived with your grandparents. I lived with my parents. The house that my parents actually still currently live in, they moved into that house when I was 18 months old. So that's the only house that I knew, like, until I moved out of my parents' house. Mm-hmm. And still, when it's like, you're going home, like, home to mom and dad's house, like, that's home. Mm-hmm. You know, like, that's my parents' house. They still live there. This house was built sometime in the early 1900s, like, before 1920. So it's well over 100 years old. I think my dad told me it was built in 1908. But I don't quote me on that. I know for a fact that someone did die in the house. Actually, the previous owner died in the house. But, I mean, I was a baby. Obviously wasn't alive when that happened. Or maybe I was alive when that happened. Either way, when I was probably 7, 8, maybe, we had a babysitter. Mm-hmm. And actually it was 2 babysitters.
As one tends to do at that age.
So I have an older sister that's 2 years older than me. So I was probably about 7. She was like 9. And then the girls that were babysitting us were like 14, 15. And we had been sitting in the living room watching TV, and the channels started flipping. And at first I was like, "What? Who's got the clicker?" You know, like back then it was a clicker,
right?
Because it literally had like two buttons on it that was, like up and down on the channels, and it would like click, 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 and then it would stop for a second, and then it would start clicking again and stop for a second. But the clicker was right in front of us. And the only other place you could do it was on the box, you know, the old cable box that was sitting above the TV. So, of course, I'm, like, freaked out. Don't really know what to do. The babysitter's like, well, let's just go ahead and start getting ready for bed, whatever. So, this house that my parents live in is a 3-story house. Like, it is a big old house, you know. We had been watching movies, and the TV situation happened in the family room. There's like a formal dining room, there's a kitchen right here, there's a front living room, and then at the front door, there's like a glass paneled front door, and then there's a window to the side and stairs that go upstairs. So as I'm walking towards the front door to go upstairs to get ready for bed, put pajamas on, whatever, I get to that window, and I look out the window, and there is a black figure. Like, I can't see any features. It's literally just a black figure. And I can tell that it is staring up at me. Because, like, it's not, like, the way that my parents, like, that part of the house, like, you have to go up some steps to get to that part of the house, like, from the front. So, like, where the window is at, like, you have to look down to the ground to where somebody would be standing. So, like, I looked and they were looking up into the window at me. Freaked me out.
I don't do shadow people.
Still to this day, I run when I go past that window. My parents still live there. I still run past that window.
And mind you, folks, she's 40 years old.
41. Yeah,
I was giving you.
You were giving me a little grace.
I was trying, but you know, if you want to claim it, I guess.
Yeah, so that was my first experience with the paranormal. Definitely my only experience with a shadow person.
Yeah, I don't do shadow people. I have experienced some shadow people, but mostly out at what was the old Bartonville Insane Asylum, which has sadly been torn down. Yeah. Probably for the best, but it makes me wonder where those restless spirits would have gone to.
For the best, simply because the building was uninhabitable.
It was uninhabitable. There was talks.
They tried so many different times to rehab it.
There was talks at one point in time somebody was going to turn it into a haunted bed and breakfast and something like that.
I don't like that idea.
At the time I did, but getting older and looking back upon that idea, it's a terrible idea because I think it's a desecration to the actual patients that were there.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah. So what Hallie is talking about is that we had the state hospital for Illinois was in Bartonville, which is what, 20 minutes from where we are at right now?
Roughly.
From where we sit right in this very spot.
Roughly.
It was very, very much,
it was supposed to be a state-of-the-art hospital when it was built in the 1890s.
Right.
Dr. Zeller was supposed to be a state-of-the-art physician.
For the 1890s, though, we have to remember that, you guys.
However, he performed needless, mindless, senseless surgeries on patients to where, like, if you walk through at least one of the cemeteries that's still out there, you will find up to 4 graves of people that died on the same fucking day.
Yep.
And that's if their names are on the fucking thing with death dates, because a lot of them, it just had their patient number on them.
Yep.
That's it.
Mm-hmm. And really, honestly, I will say, of what remains from the Bartonville State Hospital,
which is mainly just the housing,
buildings and the housing,
the housing, the gymnasium and cafeteria is torn down. The main hospital itself is torn down. One of the cemeteries actually got bulldozed over. Not sure if they moved the bodies.
I hope they did.
But I went out there for I had to do a drug test for a job that I was applying for at the time, and I asked them there because it's right. It was like right across the street from the hospital.
old tuberculosis ward is still there.
No. The main hospital itself was the TB ward.
Well, but they're the what's it called? The quarantine area what is now that
the museum?
No,
The haunted house?
The haunted house.
We're not naming names, because I work for...
I don't even care about the fact that you work for Spook Hollow. Like, we love Spook Hollow. I'm not naming names because I do not like the fact that they are inside a building like that has so much history and literally has spirits roaming around. They talk about feeling the spirits there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And the stuff that they're doing inside that haunted house is very much making fun of those spirits, and I do not like it.
I don't like it either.
It puts a bad taste in my mouth.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways. Yeah, there's a lot of really, really interesting stuff that still does remain, and what I was going to say, what does remain that I think is really, really cool is the cemetery that is still there.
The large cemetery that's still there.
Because I know at some point they were doing tours of the cemetery, which is very, very interesting because they tell stories about the patients while they were on the tours. At least the one time that I actually did go out for a tour there.
But no, when I was there at the facility doing the drug test, I asked them if they had any like unexplained activity that they just didn't know what was going on. The collection bottles for urine.
Yeah.
They had them stacked up in a storeroom and they'd get knocked over constantly.
I'm not
constantly.
Surprised.
Nobody
surprised.
in there. No breeze, no windows.
Yeah.
Toppled.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's I can only imagine the amount of activity just on that hill alone.
Oh, God, I have stories.
Because when it was at its prime, they had nurses and doctors that had their homes there. Mm-hmm. They lived on the property. Mm-hmm. And on top of that, other staff lived on the property as well and had homes on the property. It wasn't just that big hospital. Mm-hmm. It was a huge area up there on Pfeiffer Road. Mm-hmm. So, I can only imagine the amount of activity that happens even in the buildings that are out around there. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So
I mean, we could do an entire episode based solely off of my experience.
I think we should actually do an episode based on
the Old State
Hospital. I think that's a good idea.
Let us know if you'd love to hear our stories on that. I mean, I've already told you one. I've got millions, well, not millions, but I've got probably a good 20, 25 stories.
Yeah, and the thing is that at least locally, I know that our local friends have got stories about the Bartonville State Hospital. I know that for a fact because I've heard them.
I mean, what was there to do in high school but to go and explore the old sanitarium?
You want to go creep in through the tunnels and get into the old state hospital? Sure.
I never got down into the tunnels. I never made it inside the actual building.
I never did either.
Tons of friends that did.
But let me tell you why.
Couldn't climb your fat ass through the window?
Not that I couldn't climb my fat ass through the window.
Because I sure as the fuck couldn't climb my fat ass through the window.
I probably couldn't. However, my concern was falling through the floor. Because I'm fat. Yes, okay? Yes. I did not want to fall through the floor and then have to have, firefighters come and rescue my ass when I shouldn't have been in there in the first place. So yeah, I stayed out of the building, at least out of the main building, because I knew how dangerous it was inside. So yeah, we have just decided that we will be doing an episode about the Bartonville State Hospital. I know for a fact that we've got friends to share some stories. My friend Chris, his grandmother was a nurse and worked at that hospital for a long time. She is still living and has stories as well. So maybe we can get Chris and Grandma to record a little video for us to clip in when we do our Bartonville State Hospital episode.
That would be fun. But enough about our shenanigans. We're going to dive right into some of our submissions that we got from our fans. The first one we have here is from Mike. Mike actually was on the main channel. He helped us review Friday the 13th Part 3, 3D. Because it is his favorite.
Yes.
Why,
Mike?
It
is a fun one. It's fine. It's fine.
It was the gimmick of the 80s.
Yeah, it was.
If you had a horror movie in the 80s that was the third one in the franchise, you had to make it 3D. You had to. Jaws 3D.
Yeah.
Amityville 3D.
Yeah. Yeah, there was a lot of 3D nonsense back then.
Anyway, so these are actually Mike's words, so I will be reading it from his perspective.
Yep.
When our daughter was born, my wife's uncle, who was a pretty gruff biker type, thought she hung the
moon.
Okay.
Yeah.
He would turn into the gentlest, sweetest man when he held her. About 2 weeks before her first birthday, he was killed in a car crash. After he was cremated, Shelley, that would be Mike's wife.
Yep.
Shelley's aunt couldn't bring herself to bring his cremains, and I'm cremated remains. I've never heard cremains.
Oh, you've never heard cremains before?
I've never heard cremains before. But she couldn't bring the cremains home, so they kept them. He said we kept them. Soon after we brought them home, our daughter would jabber and laugh while looking at a blank wall. She would recoil back like someone was trying to tickle her. This became a pretty common occurrence for about 6 months. At first, we thought it was just a baby learning to talk. I mean, most people would, right?
Yeah.
But the more we watched, the more we could tell she was interacting with someone. Once Shelley's aunt came and took the cremains, the conversations stopped. Our daughter is now almost 26 years old and highly empathetic. She tends to know when someone is wrong or someone has died. She can do a full autopsy on a cadaver. Apparently she is a medical examiner. Nice. And see any level of gore in a movie. But if anyone shows emotional anguish, she is beside herself.
That's really sweet. That actually leads me into one of my stories about my house that I used to live in.
Oh, I know this story all too well.
So let me start with, just the story of this house in general is really interesting. So, my late husband, Luke, and I bought this house. It was on Ayers over in West Peoria. And West Peoria is one of the older parts of Peoria in general.
With the exception of, like, the downtown Main Street area.
Yeah, that was,
Moss
like,
Avenue,
the oldest part.
Right,
but, yeah, like, Moss Avenue really is not that far from West Peoria.
I know it's
West
not.
Peoria is really kind of not far from Moss Avenue. So, yeah, it is one of the older parts of Peoria. So, we bought this house. We moved into the house. I think we had been there for...
I thought you were renting it.
No, we bought it.
Oh.
We bought it. So, actually... The house, the person that owned the house, had planned to rent it, and it had been for sale by owner, and we were the last person. Like, he was literally going to put it on the market to rent the next day, and he was like, "Nah, we'll let him come and look at it before we decide to rent it." We put an offer on it that night. So, anyways, so yeah, they were literally on the brink of renting it, and we bought it before they could. So we moved into the house. We had been there for maybe a few weeks, not very long at all. And I was sitting on the couch. Me and Luke were sitting on the couch. And the way that our house was set up was like, the couch was right here, and then right across from us was the TV. And just to the side of the TV was the doorway to the hall where our bedrooms were at. So there was a bedroom here, a bathroom in the middle. So, like, here's this doorway. Well, so our daughter, at the time, was 11 months old. So she was walking, but there was no way in hell she could get out of her bed. Like, she was very short for her age, and she just had never figured out how to get it. Actually, she never figured out how to get out of her bed.
That's
her
good.
Little brother figured that shit out real fast. But yeah, Olive just never really figured out how to get out of her bed. Regardless, she was less than a year old. She didn't have the capability of getting out of her bed on her own. So we're sitting there and watching TV, and out of the corner of my eye, I see, and I look, a child standing in the hallway. And you know, like, when a kid gets out of bed and they're doing that thing where they're, like, trying to be hidden, and so they kind of, like, look to see if, like, anybody can see them, and they're, like, kind of looking around the corner. That's what this child was doing, okay? But it was a blonde-haired boy. My daughter has never had bright blonde hair.
Oh,
never.
She's a brunette.
Yes. Even when she was little, she never, sometimes babies have lighter colored hair. No, she has never had light colored hair. And I knew just from from whatever feeling I got, that it was a little boy. And I, like, slapped Luke. I'm like, "Did you see that? he's like, see what? And I'm like, there was a little boy in the hallway.
Of course he didn't see it.
Of course he didn't.
Of course he didn't see it.
Luke was highly skeptical anyways. He was just a very skeptical person. Like, he didn't believe in ghosts. He didn't believe in paranormal stuff. He didn't believe in really, like, anything. He was pretty much agnostic. Like, he believed in a higher power. Mm-hmm. He definitely believed that there was something bigger than us, but didn't believe in any kind of religion. Didn't practice any particular religion. Just didn't believe in that stuff, you know? And he was like, oh, Jenny, you're just seeing stuff. Quit being like that. You're being silly. And I'm like, dude, I'm telling you, I just saw a little boy in the hallway. So time goes on, and I run into the previous owner at the little local grocery store over in West Peoria. And I walk up to her, and I'm like, hey, weird question for you. And she's like, you know, how are you liking the house, whatever. And I'm like, I love it. You know, we love it. Great. We're all moved in, whatever. But weird little question for you. Did you ever get the feeling that that house was haunted? And her face just went blank. Like blank. And she goes, what'd you see? And I was like...
Not even an ounce of skepticism. I was like, what'd you see?
Am I crazy? And she was like, no, but tell me what you saw. And I said, I saw...
I mean, yes, you are crazy.
Right. I said, I saw a little... She goes, boy in the hallway? And I was like, yeah, a little boy in the hallway. She was like, yeah, we used to see him too. Jason didn't believe he was there. Jason still doesn't believe he's there, but me and the kids both saw him. In fact, my sister used to come home on the weekends from college sometimes, and instead of going and staying at my parents' house, she would come and stay with us because we have this back door that goes straight down to the basement. She could come and go as she pleased. She didn't, you know, have to come through the house or whatever. Mm-hmm. Didn't wake anybody up. Didn't bother my parents. One night she comes storming up the stairs and she's like, I can't find Gabe. And Beth is like, what do you mean you can't find Gabe? And she's like, I was sleeping and Gabe came and grabbed my foot. And I saw him run off, but I can't find him.
And you're like, who's Gabe?
Well, Gabe is their son.
Okay.
Gabe is their son, right?
Context, Jenny, context.
Sorry. They have a son who is around the same age as what this little boy, this little blonde-haired boy would have been. So they walk down to Gabe's room, and he's sound asleep in his bed. And she's like, no, I swear I saw this little boy grab my foot and then run off. So that's just the start of it. I used to feel... The first time Luke started believing was when the bed would move by his foot. Ah. Like somebody was moving the bed, trying to shake his foot to wake him up.
Okay.
I also experienced someone leaning on the bed, almost like they were trying to, like, tell me something, or kiss me, or, like say goodnight, or something like that, right? It was when Olive started talking. This is why I say that Mike's story leads into this. It was when Olive started talking to the little boy.
I was going to ask, because I know that there are a lot of cases where young children...
Especially
young children. A lot of times adults...
might see little glimmers. Little bits.
I was going to say a lot of times adults, and I'm talking like our parent generation, because I tend to think that we are a little bit more
open to things.
They would just chalk it up to their child's overactive imagination. Yep. Like they have an imaginary friend. Oh, that's just...
Now, Olive did have an imaginary friend too, but that's beside the point. That imaginary friend went everywhere with us.
A lot of imaginary friends, though, are
absolutely
sometimes... not necessarily benevolent spirits.
Yeah, but some kind of a spirit. Mm-hmm. I never got any kind of feeling in that house.
That anything wanted to hurt you.
That anything wanted to hurt me, with the exception... I don't want to say that it wanted to hurt me. There was one time, and this is the only other story I'm going to tell about this house, because it's the important one. There was one time where I actually did feel scared in the house. I woke up at 3 a.m. Go figure.
The witching hour.
The witching hour. I woke up at 3 a.m. I don't know what woke me up. I just woke up. Got up. Went to the bathroom. Come back. As I lay back down, Luke wasn't working that night. He was sleeping in bed next to me. And he gets up and goes to the bathroom. And I'm like, did I wake you up? Like, I hear him get up. I'm like, did I wake you up? And he's like, no, I actually woke up right before you woke up. I'm like, oh. He was like, but I heard you get up and go to the bathroom, so I didn't want to, like, you know, I figured I'd let you finish going to the bathroom.
So you guys both woke up roughly the same time.
Yeah. So I come back. You know, he gets up to go to the bathroom. And he comes back from the bathroom and walks into the bedroom, and he's all the way onto the other side of the bed, getting into the bed, when a cup comes flying out of the bathroom.
Never had flying objects.
Not fell off the counter and tumbled into the hallway.
Went flying into the
room.
room.
Hit the wall in the hallway. So Luke goes, "What was that?" And I was like, "It was a cup."
It was 2 girls
and
in
it
one
just
cup.
hit the wall. They were done with their cup, apparently.
I'm sorry, that was very poor form.
And I was like, "It was a cup." And he's like, "Well, you want to hear something weird?" And I'm like, "Yeah."
Not really.
Yeah, I do. Now that we're awake at 3 o'clock in the morning, there's cups flying in my house. Tell me something weird. And he's like, "Well, when I first walked into the bathroom, I could have sworn I saw a full-size man sitting in the bathtub." Needless to say, neither of us went back to sleep that night. We both laid there. But neither of us slept. It was just one of those things. Nothing scary ever happened after that. I will say,
I can almost guarantee you there was some type of entity that was trying to take a bath.
And was like, "Get the fuck out! Y'all are bothering me!"
Yep.
Dang, one of you comes in and pees, now the other one? Shit!
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I can almost guarantee you that's what happened.
Yeah. I did say that was going to be my last story from that house. I have to share one more. Because one thing...
Jenny's an oversharer.
I do share it a lot. One more thing that was very important to me happened after Luke passed away. And that is that every night when Luke was alive, it was always Luke's job to go in and read a book to Olive, and then I would come in and sing a song to her, and then he would come in and tell her goodnight, and we'd both tell her goodnight and leave the room together.
Okay.
So after he passed away, one night I was in there and I read her book to her and sang her song to her, and I was standing at the doorway, telling her goodnight and I love you and whatever, and I felt a presence literally breeze right past me as if it was Luke walking in to go and tell her goodnight. It was the most beautiful feeling I had ever felt. Like, it felt incredible. I felt him not go through me, but enough to where I could feel him, like, in my body. I could feel his presence in my body. And it was like... something that I will never, ever, ever forget. Like, spirits are real, okay? They might not always be here. I don't necessarily believe that there's, like, souls trapped here on Earth.
I don't think it's, like, full-on souls. I think pieces of them either stay attached to objects or
places.
Or even people.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that a portion of them stay with you.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah, definitely. Like a shadow. Like a little piece. Yeah. It's interesting. So, yeah, I personally have felt the presence in like on my body. Right. So, there's for me, there's no denying the existence of spirits.
Oh, no, I'm a firm believer in that aspect of the paranormal.
For sure.
This next story comes from Paul. He says, "My grandma passed away a few years ago. Since then, she's been living with us. I know she's around, and so does my mom. Cabinets open up, and stuff falls out. Stuff falls over by itself. Things go missing, only to turn up later. Things move. Sometimes when my mom is home alone, she can hear soft footsteps, especially when she's in the basement. Which is where our set is.
Yeah.
Not that house, though.
No, yeah.
Like someone walking around. And we've seen here many times. My mom has woken up to see her at the end of the bed. She's around all the time. We both can sense and feel her. My grandma is just there to remind us we're not alone and everything will be okay. My grandpa, not so much. I'm sure he's around too, but it's mostly my grandma, and I'm glad she's around even though she can be noisy sometimes. Which I will now share my story of passing. Fans of this channel know that my dad passed away 23 years ago. And I was 19 at the time in high school. Or out of high school, but, not... whatever.
Freshly out.
So this was after my grandma had passed, who I lived with for, like I said, the first 17 years of my life. Right. So this was me and my parents' first house together as, like, a just platonic family.
Yeah.
A platonic family. My room was in the basement. And actually, to get to my room, you didn't even have to go up into the house. There was a porch area that you walked in a door, and you went up steps, and then you were in the house, but you could go down steps and get to my room.
Gotcha.
So I easily snuck out quite a bit when I was in high school.
Yeah. That's like when I was talking about Beth's sister coming home at their house. Like, that's because, like literally, it was cut off from the rest of the house. Mm-hmm. You could literally just go right down into the basement.
Mm-hmm. So this was... I don't know, maybe a month after he'd passed. He passed right before Christmas, 2001, so this was like January 2002. I roll over, and I always kept the door to my room shut. And I see what looks like this glowing, amorphous blob come down the steps. And it comes through my fucking door. And I'm just like...
Yeah.
Did I just see that?
Right?
And I'm like, Dad? To which the amorphous, illuminated blob goes through the door and back up the steps.
That's crazy.
It's the only time I had ever experienced. My ex, at the time, we were together, she saw it before I did. Like, a few nights before I did.
Oh, wow.
But once I saw it, neither one of us ever saw it again.
Wow. He was coming to visit you.
Yeah. And I was never awake.
Yeah, you weren't there.
So I was never awake.
Yeah.
To see it. So as soon as I saw it, poof, gone. Wow. And it's also interesting to note, too, that...
Has your mom ever seen him?
No.
You think if she had, she would tell you?
No. To be honest.
Yeah.
So when my mom retired from working, she moved from... not even that house, it was another house that she had to move into, but she is now currently living in a senior's home. And when we moved her out of that house, I got a lot of things that she just didn't want.
Sure.
One of the items that I received was a old leather travel case for, like, cosmetic items. To put this in perspective, this was the bag that my dad took to go to the hospital whenever he had to go to the hospital. He had quadruple bypass surgery back in 1992, so that went with him a lot of places when he went to the hospital and had to do overnight stays and stuff like that. The day I brought that bag in my house, this house, 2 weeks, all I smelled was sawdust. Which is a scent that I associate with my father because he was constantly working, building, refurbishing furniture, stuff like that. So sawdust was a scent that I always associated with him. And for the first 2 weeks that bag was in this house, all I smelled was sawdust. Like every time I walked past the room or in the room where the bag was, sawdust. Sawdust.
So cool. That's so cool. That's got to be a really nice nostalgic smell.
Oh,
like every time you smell it makes you think of your dad.
Every time I smell wood cutting, doesn't matter where I'm at, instantly takes me back to where I'm a kid.
Yeah.
And he's working on something.
Yeah.
Every time.
That's cool. Yeah, whenever I smell, like, sawdust and stuff like that, yeah, especially, or, like, for whatever reason, polyurethane, like, stuff like that, it always reminds me of my grandpas. Both my grandpas. They both had, like, big workshops. They both were woodworkers.
And to put things in perspective, my father would have been about her grandfather's age. He was 60 when he died. If he was alive, he'd be 81.
My grandpa passed away 9 years ago, and he was 94. My grandpa was a lot older. My dad's the youngest of 5 kids, so I mean, like, they were pretty spread out. But my mom's parents would have been closer to my mom's mom passed away when she was 84, I think, and that was just a few years ago. So she wouldn't be that much older than your dad. Yep. That's interesting. I have a little story. It's a short little story that my friend Rhea had sent to me, and it's actually her parents' story. So let me get to that really quick here. All right. So she says, "Hi, it's not my personal story, but it's my mom's. Apparently, she and my dad went to this old Civil War hospital to do some ghost hunting."
That'll do it.
Now Rhea lives in San Antonio, Texas. So I'm not sure if that's where her parents are from, but that's where she lives. So it very easily could be, maybe not in Texas, but somewhere in the South would be Civil War.
Somewhere in the South would be Civil War.
Because Texas was not part of the Union yet.
No.
At that point. So, anyways, they did the little flashlight thingy where it turns on and off after asking a spirit a question. And allegedly, they heard someone speaking on a spirit box. The best part is, when they left, they were told to say goodbye to the spirits in the hospital. Apparently, my dad didn't think it did anything. So when they left on my dad's motorcycle, my mom swore she felt a hand on her shoulder. Probably not the coolest story you'll hear, but I thought it was really cool. Can't wait to listen. That's from my friend Rhea. So yeah, I mean, that's another, again, old hospitals. Well, just hospitals in general. Okay. Can we all just agree that hospitals are a little creepy?
At least in horror films.
Well, yes.
As we've discovered this trope recently.
Yes. However, one of the movies that we're about to review puts that trope to a test.
Oh, it puts it to its extreme.
Yes.
Extreme.
Anyways, so in general though, hospitals are just, I mean, like, there's dead bodies there. There just is. Every hospital you go to, there's dead bodies there. They have them work there. That's what it's for, you know? People die there. Lots and lots and lots of people die in hospitals. That's just the way it is. I worked at Methodist Hospital in the X-ray file room. And this was before everything went digital. So they were literal X-ray files that if someone came in through the ER or came in through the X-ray department and had to have an X-ray done, if they had an X-ray done previously of that same body part, then you would have to go and pull the previous one so that they can compare.
You can compare, right. Yeah, no, that makes sense.
So anything that was past 2 years was in a special section of the file room, but anything past 5 years was
in the basement.
It was.
That's usually where they go, is in the basement.
All the way in, like, down, literally, like, just hallways and hallways and hallways. Like you have to go down into the deeps. And usually, when you're working the X-ray file room, you're by yourself. You're there pulling files. That's what you're doing. You might have one other person whose shifts overlap by, like, a couple of hours, but, like, you're pretty much there by yourself. Yeah, I don't even know if I have a story necessarily for that, but those hallways are
creepy
fucking
as fuck.
Scary. Scary.
All right, Paul actually does have a couple more stories that he wanted us to share. He said that I've had numerous incidences at places where I've worked. Just a month ago, a jar of dressing went flying off a prep table, so I'm guessing he's worked in the restaurant industry. Just boom, and on the floor. Like someone swatted it off. I put it back, and it went sailing off again. Everyone in the kitchen was like, fuck this, and left. And that wasn't the first time things went flying off the table without anyone around.
Restaurants are another place where people, I swear, there's a lot of haunted restaurants in this country, for sure.
Pubs, restaurants, anything that has like emotional attachment to people, they can fracture's not really, but they can leave a piece
imprint,
of them. Yeah.
Is what I kind of look at it. Like leaving a little imprint of themselves on the building. That's
not an imprint, though, because imprints usually are
benign. They're messing with things.
They're literally, like, non-intelligent. Yeah. Like, they're just there on a loop doing what they normally did.
Right.
That is intent. That is... God, I wish I could remember this terminology.
The flipping of the channels that I was talking about when I was a kid, that was not the first time. It was the first time. It was not the last time that happened.
Oh, I can almost guarantee
it. In fact, it would happen very close to the same time every night. Like somebody definitely wanted to watch on... got home from work and was like clicking through, trying to find something to watch, or got the kids to bed and was clicking through trying to find something to watch. You know, whatever it was just like a habit that they did. You know,
oh, yeah.
So
Paul also goes on to tell us that when he worked out at Wildlife Prairie Park, there was a small basement area off one of the banquet rooms. I can attest to this. We've done weddings out there.
Yep, I have too.
Totally creepy. When I went down there, it felt wrong, like something lurking in the shadows. I hated using the bathroom down there because you could sense something close, like something watching you. The worst times was when the storm hit. Place reminded me of something out of Friday the 13th. I don't know how many times I felt watched or something behind me out there. You could hear things too. No one else did, but I heard weird things. I hated the place. I always thought those stuffed animals they had would come to life. Seriously, those things are super creepy.
I will say about Wildlife Prairie Park, especially if you work there on a regular basis, they have a lot of weird little buildings that are spread out around that I can imagine would be not a fun place to be by yourself. Plus there's like teepees and there's like I imagine that there is...
I can imagine that there's some Native American...
For sure. I mean, Peoria in general has a lot of Native American history. In fact, I mean...
Peoria is named after a Native American tribe. Or a branch of the Illini tribe.
Even as recently as, I want to say like 10 years ago, they have found, while doing construction... buried bodies, because lower downtown Peoria used to be a burial ground for the Indian tribes,
not even just
were here.
That, but poorer class people too.
True. Back then,
just a couple years ago, there was a body that was found that was actually a prominent woman here in Peoria that was found under a parking lot.
Yeah.
So...
Yeah, because old Peoria decided to just, like, bulldoze a bunch of, little scary. We're trying to get all poltergeisty here in Peoria, Illinois. Let me tell you what.
Right.
I'm sure we're not the only ones.
Paul does have a couple more things. Over the years, I've lost many relatives. My great aunt has been haunted by her husband. Not bad. She just sees him here and there, smiling at her, reassuring her. When my great-grandma died, you could sense her presence when we cleared out her home, especially in her bedroom. I could see that.
Yeah, for sure.
He goes on to state, I think being haunted and sensing the afterlife. Nice plug for the podcast there. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Paul.
And ghosts runs in our family. Nothing bad or evil has happened, which is good. I hope my grandma never leaves us. I enjoy having her around.
Yeah. There's that one experience that I had with Luke was the only time that I like physically felt him. I feel his presence around us often. In fact, so Randy's dad passed away in our house. When Randy was 17. And when Linus was little, like when he was a baby, we would sit and he would look over my shoulder and laugh and sometimes go like this. And I would swear up and down that he was playing with somebody. Whether it was Luke or whether it was Randy's dad, I don't know. Could have been anybody. Could have been Luke's or Randy's mom who just recently passed away. I mean, could be any number of family members, but I just think it's really sweet when family members come to visit. That makes me happy.
We have one more story from one of our fans. This comes from Amy's cousin, Lacey. It's not her story, but her daughter, Kalia's story. So in 1977, my Uncle David was killed by getting hit by a semi-truck right by my grandparents' house when he was only a teenager.
God, that's awful.
This was years before I was even born. Then my daughter, Kalia, was born in 2010, and my family is pretty sure she saw my Uncle David. When Kalia was around 3 years old, she was supposed to be going to the basement for something at my grandparents' house. However, she wouldn't go down the stairs. My aunt couldn't figure out why Kalia was just standing there. Kalia told my aunt there was a guy in the basement who said he was trapped in a big truck and couldn't come upstairs because it was too loud. Months later, Kalia saw a photo of Uncle David in my grandparents' living room and pointed out that was the man in the basement.
Ooh.
Years later, we moved out of the state, and Kalia, now in grade school, saw a black figure while staying at our friend's house. She was terrified, but then she saw my Uncle David again staring at the black figure. We are pretty sure Uncle David is her guardian angel at this point.
Oh, that's so cool. Oh, that gives me the chills.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. That's so cool. So cool.
So thank you to all that decided to share stories with us. We are clearly going to be doing another episode of this.
Because we have only talked about paranormal. And we want to know your stories because we know you've got stories for the Bartonville State Hospital.
I've got stories galore for that. I've got a Bigfoot story to tell. I have tons of alien stories to tell.
And I've got some stories to tell about Springdale Cemetery. So if anybody's got a couple of Springdale Cemetery stories, we can click those all together too. So
Abso-freaking-lutely.
Mm-hmm. Thank you all so much for joining us today on our podcast as we start to dive into the paranormal.
We do apologize for the latency in this episode. We did not put one out in December. The holidays just kind of caught up with us, and we just couldn't, between everything else we had going on, families, the editing of the main channel and everything like that, we just could not find the time to get together and record something.
Yep.
So...
But now it seems like we're starting a little series almost on the paranormal.
Mm-hmm.
So tune in on our next podcast. We'll probably do this again in a couple weeks, maybe.
Hopefully.
Maybe
Hopefully.
not. If at the very least we're going to be doing this once a month. So join us again next time where we are going to dive even deeper into ghost stories and spirit stories and
strange encounters from across
cryptids and
right.
Love it. And, make sure you join us on our main channel where we talk about horror movies. And then until next time, we will see you all
right here in
the afterlife.